Hi, and welcome back. My name is Jennifer Britton. Like you, I'm a professional coach, and I'm also the author of Effective Virtual Conversations, Plan, Do, Track, and several other books related to group and team coaching. Thanks for joining us for this Conversations in the Virtual Space Getting Started. This is one of several videos produced for the ICF to help you as you make the transition from in-person work to the virtual space. So maybe you're coaching one-on-one, or maybe all of a sudden you're being asked to coach teams or groups virtually. What do you do? Where do you start? Today's video is all about helping you navigate 10 things you can do as you transition into the virtual space. Some of these are quick, some of these are a little bit more extended, but they are things that you're going to want to think about. Everything from it's all about the connection to focusing on process to getting more comfortable with the tools that we work with every day. Ultimately, just a reminder, coaching is about a conversation. In my 2017 book, Effective Virtual Conversations, I wanted to bring to life what typically has been happening in the world of virtual meetings. It's often been, quote unquote, a death by conference call, where people are multitasking. They are doing multiple things at once, and it feels very frenetic. As we know, coaching is about the pause. It's about a micro pause. And so we really do want to create a strong culture, a strong environment with the people that we're coaching to recognize and indicate this is not like your death by conference call. This is an interactive dialogue. Dia meaning two. It's got to be a two-way conversation. So as you go to design with your clients, what is it that they can expect? And really be noticing and working with them to listen for and watch the energy in the call. If you've only been doing face-to-face work, you might feel a little uncomfortable, but there is an energetic flow that happens naturally throughout the course of a coaching conversation. Now that flow is going to be different every conversation and every client. If you're working with groups and teams, you'll also see this energy flow. It is an area that hopefully we're getting very curious around and looking at what does it mean? What does it signal? Notice how fast your client is talking. Notice how they're taking breaths and what they're pausing around. Listen and watch the energy. Another big area to be aware of is silence. I think naturally we want to fill the void. One tip that you might incorporate in your work is actually doing some real-time work with folks, with your clients on the phone or on Zoom. If you don't feel comfortable with silence, get your phone, set a timer, and use that as a real pause. When I work with groups and teams, many times we only take 90 seconds or even 2 minutes to reflect individually on questions before we get into the conversation. What that means is we're able to slow things down and really then think about what's important. And that may be a difference than what you've experienced in person. In person, we step into a room, we close the door, we get ourselves settled. When we dial into a Zoom call or a conference call, we may not have that same routine. So definitely think about how you can welcome people into the call and give them a micro pause. Another one is to think about what's beyond the screen. What's outside of what I can see? And again, get curious. Get your clients to maybe share as much as they can. Coaching is about context as well. And while we don't need to know it, we do want people to be aware of what's outside and how they're going to apply things. When coaching happens virtually, it's very easy to keep it on the screen. So be sure to ask questions around what's the next step you're going to undertake? What's the next step you're going to undertake in the next 24 hours or immediately after our call? Get curious, get thinking about what's beyond the screen. This is actually a quote that I have in my newest writing at the Remote Pathways series. And I'd invite you to join in. If you like podcasts, join us at remotepathways.com. Part of this work is also making sure that we distill it down to its finest elements. So I could have done 100 tips, would have been very easy. I debated, do I do 5 tips? But I really felt that less did equal a little bit more. And as I wrote in Effective Virtual Conversations, less truly is more in virtual facilitation. Everything you do, especially the first time, is likely to take more time than you expect. And it is a natural impulse to try to put as much into a program as we can. Less is more. We need to spend more time on process, more time setting things up, maybe even getting people to do some pre-work before they come to the call. So think about what less is more means to you in the context of your work. As I just said, one of our other tips is this focus on process. As you work with your clients, think about the flow. What is going to help set people up for success? And is there any pre-work they need to do? So that's it. We're going to move now into a part 2 of this series, and here's 5 more. So you have the option, if you're watching this, you can stop and pause and take note on those first 5 tips, or you can continue on into part 2. This next one is a big one because it's about getting confident with tools. And as you make the transition from in-person work to virtual work, where a lot of coaches are probably going to find their growth edge is getting confident with the tools. So I want us to take a few minutes just taking us through some of the common tools that you will find on most, not all, but many of the virtual platforms. First of all, practice. Practice makes perfect. And for you to be able to listen and focus and coach, rather than think about everything you need to do, practice. Most of these will allow you to open the portal, practice it, whether it's you or you and a loved one only on the platform. One of the technologies I really like to use, especially when I coach groups and teams, is breakouts. And I get the question, well, what really is a breakout, Jen? A breakout is when we bring 3 or 4 or even 2 people together and they get to be in a small virtual room by themselves. Coaching is about the conversation. And if we are working with more than one person, it's really important that we do give them space and time to have their voices heard. Breakouts allow us to do that. Another area we might incorporate are polls, and I've got a quick example of a poll, and I've got another example of annotation, which allows us to work on the screen. Finally, think about how you might use recording as a tool. One of the things most of my virtual one-on-one clients love is actually getting a copy of the recording. So I ask them at the start of every call, would you like a copy of this? And I'm always fascinated by what people say and what they do with it. For some clients, they actually go back and listen to it. They notice their own nuances. They take notes, and that way they're able to be more present with me rather than trying to capture notes, have the conversation, etc. So as with every client, we know every client is different. How can you adjust and work with them? So first area I wanted to look at is polls. And polls need to be activated in most portals. You'll find them on Zoom as an option usually. You'll also be able to find polls in many other platforms. So I use Mentimeter. I also use Kahoot with some other clients. But what's nice with polls, if you're working with more than one person, is it gives an opportunity to take stock of what people want to look at. So in some larger groups that I work with, we actually do a poll. Where do you want to focus on today? Do we want to talk about opportunities? Do we want to talk about change? Do we want to talk about the ecosystem of our work or something else? So polls is a great way to get below the waterline. Now, I don't use them that much. I often will put people in breakouts based on what people are wanting to do. So if we have 3 people in opportunities, 2 in ecosystem, 3 in change, instead of just having everyone do the same thing, people can go to the breakout room of their choice. And that allows for a much more robust conversation where peer coaching takes place. So one thing to keep in mind, you may need to build peer coaching skills. Visuals are key. I didn't have this as one of them, but visuals are key. And one thing you'll want to keep in mind is what is the resourcing you have. Over the years in my work, I've built up my own supply of stock photography. Make sure that you are well aware of intellectual property laws and make sure that you are investing in some tools if you are looking at bringing some of those in-person tools into the digital space. They don't always translate. You may need to get a digital license to use some of the tools. This is an example, and in further, you'll see one of my other tools that I like to use. So finally, we have annotation. And annotation, I think, is a great opportunity for clients to really get their hands on. I've got 3 different examples here. First is an example of metaphors, and this comes from a recent call I did with the Remote Pathways series. We were talking about what's the energy, what is the metaphor that represents where you want to go, and that was circled by different group members. Again, You can have lots of different options, but metaphors, as we know, creates a whole new layer of understanding. Second one that you'll see in the midpoint is from the Group Coaching Essentials program, where we talk about the continuum of group coaching. Are we coaching? Are we training? Are we facilitating? And as you can see here, people can both scribe on the screen and also make notation on the screen. This moves a call away from the coach in the center, more like a trainer, into a very interactive sharing of knowledge. We can also use graphics and graphical elements, and you'll see yet another group here on the right with the coaching focus. So a couple of examples, and this is a tool that you need to activate. I would encourage you to think about how can you use annotation in your work, especially if you have more than one person in the coaching conversation. So think about what you're going to use so far. Ultimately, as I said at the start of this recording, we want to make it visual. Really important that we make it visual. In person, we can use a lot of Post-it notes. What do we do on the web? Well, you can find virtual Post-it notes as well. Or maybe you use with the analogy of a roadmap. And you've heard me mention the Remote Pathways series time and time again. In fact, it was a lot of the group coaching work that I was doing around the roadmap analogy that helped me name this whole new body of work that I'm engaging with around remote work, remote leadership, remote teamwork, i.e. the Remote Pathways series. Ultimately, be true to you as a coach. And I want to put a little reminder here that once we move to the virtual, it doesn't mean that we need to be static. Okay, so a lot of us, first of all, as coaches, we get comfortable with ourselves on the Zoom, on the virtual space. We need to also support our clients to get into that. But as they do, think about how you might use your app or other elements to get people up and moving. It's really important that we incorporate geography or somatic approaches or use body-centered coaching approaches. It's not just about talking. So my invite with this photo is to get you thinking about what are the different doorways in, right? What is, I think, keeps coaching so exciting is that we can have many, many different doorways into the coaching conversation. In this call, I've shared about 10. So what are the ones that you want to use? Ultimately, it's about getting comfortable. As I write in Effective Virtual Conversations, it's about getting it into your body, your brain, and your voice. Okay, so it's about getting this into your body, your brain, and your voice, and practice makes perfect. There will be a bit of a transition lens. You may not have a choice as to how your conversations are going to take place, other than you know it needs to be virtual. So persevere, practice, ask your clients, what are they using? What do they find useful? And you may be learning together. I hope that you found some very practical things to set you up for success, and always be asking what's going to help your clients set themselves up for success. So what barriers will people face in their learning or conversational process? What pre-work will support people in being ready to learn and be ready for the conversation? Instead of doing something in person, maybe you have them do it pre-conversation. Also think about the goals, right? Our goals are central to coaching. So what goals are people wanting to work on? And what accountability will sustain the conversation? You may notice that this shifts as you go. Finally, are there other things that are going to set your clients up for success? I hope that you found this useful. And as I shared in an earlier recording, there really are a number of enablers that I like to call the 7 C's to remote work. How are you using clarity? How are you connecting people? How are you building a strong culture for a conversation? Not a talking app, but a virtual conversation. What are you doing to create consistency and build and leverage community and collaboration with the folks that you're working with? I hope that you'll have as much fun as I do and those that I work with. Ultimately, notice your presence. How are you showing up? Are you confident or are you distracted with all the technology? What are you doing to maintain that fluid flow of conversation? And what are you focusing on? There, of course, are many other things, but as you transition over to the virtual or remote space, notice your presence. And most importantly, I hope that you'll check out more of the resources that are available to you. Again, I've dedicated the last 30 years to supporting leaders, teams, and professionals of all kinds, and now coaches, as they make the transition from the in-person realm to the virtual space. So every Monday for the last several years, I've pulled tips out of the Effective Virtual Conversations book, and those are found over at my Teams 365 blog at potentialsrealized.com. You can also download a 28-page remote working white paper when you need to get up to speed quickly. And I would invite you to share that with your teams and the leaders that you work with. Many folks right now are having to really make this transition and are struggling with it. Please pick up a copy of the book, Effective Virtual Conversations, or Plan, Do, Track, which is a workbook planner for remote and virtual professionals. You'll find both of those at Amazon. And finally, maybe you want more practice and feedback. Join me for an upcoming Virtual Facilitation Essentials session. And with that, have a great day. We'll come back for one more recording and share with us. Let us know, what was your biggest aha in this short video series today? All right, be well, take care.